Good morning, friends. It is a pleasure to be with you here today. My name is Matt Anderson. I'm Mosaic Miami's Executive Director, and it is an honor for me to be here with Miami Community Newspaper's publisher, Michael Miller.
Wonderful. Anderson, thank you very much for being here. So let's talk a little bit about you. Number one, tell us about your role with Mosaic Miami.
So I serve as Mosaic Miami's Executive Director. May will be 5 years, and Mosaic Miami has been in this community for 91 years. I've been involved with the organization for almost 10 years. Mosaic Miami started as a Miami chapter of the National Conference of Christians and Jews in 1935. That was an organization at the forefront of the interfaith movement. It came about in the 1920s when a group from the Christian and Jewish community came together in an effort to fight off hate speech with groups that were forming like the KKK. And we've been around for every meaningful part almost of Miami's history. And as Miami became more and more diverse, so did our work, because we work across Miami's difference. And 3 years ago, we decided that it was time for a rebrand, and we decided to call it Mosaic Miami, bringing all the beautiful pieces of Miami together to make a beautiful mosaic. And right now, and I'm sure you know this, one of the most powerful things a community can do is create spaces for people not just to talk, but to listen and to learn and to come together to build real relationships.
So Priscilla knows this is producing the show. Priscilla, thank you very much for producing the show, and a recent graduate of FIU.
Congratulations.
That we do a lot of shows with Orthodox rabbis, and I've learned a lot about life. And I remember in some of the marches when my father took me to in St. Augustine, and I said, "Pop, what did these black people ever do to these white people to get them so angry?" And we were standing in line on the sidewalk surrounded by state troopers, and it was terrible activities. 60 years later, I'm still saying some of the same things. What did a group of people ever do to another group of people themselves to continue the anger and the hate? So I'm delighted that you're working on, I'm helping people understand each other, and there's a space for everyone. By the way, somebody did mention your organization to me the other day, right? And I'm thinking, I think I'm getting together with that guy, all right? So Matt, again, I'm delighted that you were here. So with this new rebranding that you did a couple of years ago, tell us some of the things you were doing and what would you like to accomplish out of that? Sure.
So our rebranding came hand in hand with the notion that the intergroup and interfaith playbook has to be rewritten. It came to light, especially after October 7th, where you had friends that are no longer friends or friends that are no longer talking. And prior to October 7th,
why don't you tell everybody what that was?
So October 7th was a very tough day when Israel was attacked by Hamas. And it was a day that, in the midst of already polarization and divisiveness, that really fractured a lot of relationships. Prior to October 7th, we started experimenting with a lot of different things, because coming out of the pandemic, the interfaith community was burnt out and coming out of a lot of isolation. So we need to come up with different ways to bring the community together. One was, to your point, in talking about going to the marches with your father in St. Augustine, you highlighted something really special, and that's the relationship between the Black and the Jewish community. It's a relationship that for a long time was collaborative, but there's also a history of growing apart. And when folks like Kanye West and Kyrie Irving were spewing horrible anti-Semitism, we felt that was a good moment, alongside our partners at the Jewish Federation and the AJC, to bring those two communities together to have real conversations. And oftentimes those conversations were tough. And the folks around those tables, they really had to sit with hearing things that they really didn't want to hear. And I think that made things a lot, I think it created real relationships. I'll give you an example. I witnessed a panel discussion, and there was a woman on the panel that made herself very vulnerable by saying that, look, coming here, I felt that I felt very scared that I was going to be canceled by saying what my reality was. But those are my lived experiences. And she said something that really could have gotten her canceled or misunderstood when she said that, growing up in my neighborhood, people would say things like, you can tell a Jewish person by their nose. She said, obviously, I know that's not the truth and that's not how I feel, but that's just an example of how she was programmed. And because she was willing to make herself so vulnerable, people said, well, I want you to know my community. Come with me to a Heat game. Come to my home for a Shabbat dinner. And that's how a community is made. Now, that's a whole roundabout way of me explaining that creating those uncomfortable situations and that uncomfortable, healthy tension helped us with October 7th. After October 7th, I had a great friend of mine reach out to me and said, Matt, I'm stuck in my echo chamber, my Jewish echo chamber, and I need to meet someone that doesn't think like me. And I had another great friend of mine who's really helped me understand the Muslim community and served as a great guide and mentor. And also, we had some uncomfortable conversations and him steering me in the right direction, sometimes telling me things I didn't want to hear. And because we developed such a great friendship, I said, well, I have the perfect person for you to meet. So they developed a friendship, and the three of us said that when the time was right, we'd bring those that are capable of having the conversation together to unpack it. And we called it A Brave Space. And it was a 3-part series. The first part was, number one, we all bought into the covenant that we're here to humanize each other through this process, even when it feels uncomfortable. And when that happens, we'll give each other the benefit of the doubt. So the first session, we said, look, we want to understand each other's connection to the region. And through that was our basis of trust. The second session, we did something called fishbowl dialogues. And these are always at people's homes. So we had 5 people at the dining room table and 5 people in the living room observing us asking each other questions like, what is from the river to the sea mean to you?
Separate? So we said?
Yeah, separate. 5 people at the dining room table.
Yes.
5 people in the living room observing. And then we'd switch.
Okay.
So we'd ask each other questions. So what does from the river to the sea mean to you? Or what does the word Zionism mean to you? And for me, it was really cool hearing people say things like, if I had seen you say that online, I would have been really upset. But given the fact that I've had the opportunity to get to know you, I might not agree with you, but I understand. And we're not in the business of converting people. We're here to get people to respect each other and learn how to have effective dialogue with each other. And in the last session, we said, now that you've had a chance to get to know each other, who do you want to spend one-on-one time with? And we gave them a framework to do so. But let me rewind and give you kind of a profile of who was in the room. So we had a former IDF soldier. We had someone that was born in the U.S. and raised in the West Bank. We had an anti-Zionist Jewish woman. We had a second-generation Chilean who had one parent from Bethlehem, the other from Palestine. So as you can imagine,
When did this take place?
A year ago. And it was an incredible experience. And again, it was an experiment because we are really intentionally rewriting this playbook to use effective tension to get people to grow and understand each other in the midst of a lot of divisiveness.
I was in a group about 4 years ago. We met at Jackson Soul Food in Overtown.
Mm-hmm.
They were the camera. 4 very successful African Americans, 1 Hispanic, and me. And this is how it started. Michael, you're the white guy. I said, oh my goodness. I said, I've never been called that before. They said, yes, you have. You just haven't heard it. And we had a real conversation. I want to thank Susie McDowell from Circle One Marketing.
Oh, yeah.
You know her?
Very well.
Yeah, she was like, she does a show here. And I'm getting goosebumps. All right. Real conversations about people and about similarities, yet to accept the differences that we have. And we had a conversation, well, why don't you do more coverage in the Black communities? So I said, you want the truth? And he said, yes. I said, because our advertisers don't want to reach poor people and Black people and orange people. They want to reach people that are going to spend money. And I said, it's up to people like you in the public relations business to tell us why we should run those stories with us. It was a wonderful conversation. One, we had a publisher that was there, African American. We had former state rep, African American, and city manager in the North Miami or North Miami Beach. I learned a lot about acceptance, and that we have these inside these prejudices that sometimes we don't know where they come from, but it bubbles up. And a good friend of mine, Oscar, and I've had extensive conversations similar to that. And he says, Michael, don't be afraid of it, but understand that's what's bubbling up. You don't have to do anything with it, but know that it's there. My father was, he was on radio and TV, and he ran on WDR, still a black station. He had a show called The Gospel Hour. So a lot of people were African Americans, blacks, I think we called Negroes back then. And so I learned to be as colorblind as I can be. But yet I understand the difference. So I asked my father a question back. I said, if I was in a room and there were 100 people in it, and the person I wanted to pay attention to was that beautiful black girl in the back, could I say she was black? I don't remember the answer. And I think when we use identification and say, can you do that? Or should I go through this whole thing to get to the person? If it was a tall blonde, I would say the tall blonde, all right? So, but inside me, I'm thinking, am I saying stuff that is racist? Am I saying stuff that's prejudiced, or is a description not meant to disarm anybody? And still today, over all this time, I'm still occasionally struggle with it, but I'm not afraid of it anymore. It's just like, it is. And, I try to be, judge them on the character of their souls rather than the way they look. And again, if there was a really short person, all right, I say, the shortest girl over there, that's the one I want you to look at. It would be fine. But Susie and Oscar and the other people, they really taught me to be open and to be fair and to understand we have differences. So I acknowledge the work that you do, and that was really tremendous to put these sometimes politically adverse people together with generations of anti-Semitism and of hate and of love, and how you get these folks to just get along a little bit more. The dinner table conversations about October 7th and families were terrible, because everybody on each side wanted to know it. They all had their conversations. And in war, it's terrible. And when we look at that, we look at all the ramifications that occurred. And so when I was involved in the Unitarian Church when I was a child, very liberal organizations. And so, we still struggle with trying to make that fairer. So what can Mosaic Miami do to make it a little bit fairer, give people pause before they say something really stupid that's really hurtful and that doesn't get anything better?
So we intentionally create collision points for people that would never have the opportunity to meet. And we do it with adults, we do it with children. As it relates to kids, we have a camp called Camp Metrotown, and we bring kids from all across South Florida that would never have the opportunity to meet, really for socioeconomic reasons. And we give them opportunities to learn how to have dialogue, to have conversations, learn about history, and put their curiosity to use and learn how to ask good questions. And it's a 1-week camp where they stay on campus at Barry University, oftentimes the first time ever on a college campus, and they stay in the dorms, and it's often a transformational experience. Now, although they experience a lot during that week, we try and create other experiential learning activities throughout the school year for them, like going to the Holocaust Memorial. We've got a strong partnership with PBS. 2 weeks ago, we were at their Egyptian Pharaoh exhibit, where they underwrote the whole experience for the kids. And it teaches them how to think outside the box. Right now, I think the Village Green is more important now than ever. So much information comes across our smartphones and our computers, and we don't know what's what oftentimes. So we create opportunities for thought leaders to come to the table that are in the trenches and have opportunities for the community to ask them questions and exchange stories.
So when we look at little kids, everybody's getting along. Right? It's all good. Then something happens. They joined the club over here, the club over there, and all of a sudden stuff that they didn't know they had, never to think about it. And we see what that has done. So tell us a little bit about why you're doing what you're doing. And you've been there how long now?
So May will be 5 years.
Why are you doing this?
So prior to this, I had a very different life. But philanthropy is in my DNA. It goes back to my mom and dad dating and trying to, decide what our family was going to look like once they got married and had me and my brother eventually. And one of the things that they decided, my dad has a very demanding career. In order to keep our family together, we did everything together, including philanthropy. And we use our resources for organizations in the areas of education, the arts. The arts are huge in my family, and social justice. So from a very young age, I was very blessed to be around a lot of tables with really influential people that took an interest in me and my brother and created so many opportunities. And one of those opportunities was later to be exposed to the Miami Coalition of Christians and Jews, which is now Mosaic Miami. And eventually I was asked to be on the board, and then I was the youngest chairman of the board ever. And in the pandemic, the organization was going through some leadership changes. And me and our vice chair took over as kind of volunteer co-CEOs while we tried to figure out what was going on, while I had my job at Merrill. And the board asked me.
What were you doing there?
I was on a wealth management team, a wealth advisor on the international side. And at first, I thought I was just going to take a sabbatical. And eventually I resigned, thinking this was going to be a couple of years, and May will be 5 years. And it was an opportunity. I was 36 at the time, and I didn't have a wife or kids. And I said, you know what, let me take this risk. I can always go back to my job, and the door was open. And it was an opportunity to rebuild something really special. Our organization is an iconic Miami organization that needs to thrive. I think our community needs an organization like ours to be a conduit to get people to communicate and learn about each other.
I had the pleasure of talking with Manus Friedman, one of the YouTube's iconic Orthodox rabbis. He was sitting here. And we talked about a lot of things, including a book that he wrote a few years called The Joy of Intimacy. And so I said, Rabbi, I had a moment of intimacy with my wife, and when I was holding her hand, I said, how can I get more of that? And he said, Michael, it's all about them. Which the other side of that, it's not about you, it's about them. And I hear that all, Rabbi, thank you. All right, I hear that all the time. So how can we get people that are struggling, as I struggled in this group of, you're the white guy. I was sort of insulted. I was like, wow, maybe they were doing it on purpose, whatever that was. Again, thank you, Susan McDowell. And I see her every 2 weeks. I give her a big hug and tell her the story again, how that's really impacted. So who knew that 5 years later we'd be here telling that story? And she said to me, Michael, I didn't know I was black until I came to the United States. I was just a Jamaican. Oh. And was stunned listening to somebody on that side about what's inside. So she's done a lot for us and a lot for the organization, and brings in lots of folks. And when about 4 years ago, I asked her to do 3 or 4 stories on successful women for a special section that we're putting out. So she does 5 stories on women, and they're all black. So I said to myself, so are you going to put these all together in one part of this special section, or are you just going to take them and distribute them throughout? They're women. That's what this section is about. So I said, you're going to put them throughout. You're not going to say, see, black women can do this too. And Thelma Gibson recently passed was one of those people. And it was so good when I said, no, you have to treat people equally. And we made sure that we did it specifically, right, throughout that, so that people could get an opportunity to move forward. So there certainly is a lot of learning and teaching that we can do with each other. But when you went from Merrill, which is money relationship thing to this, which is more of giving and it's about them and less about you. What caused you to do that, to move from potentially a lot of wealth, all right, earned wealth, to this, which is a labor of love?
So eventually when the idea was sprung for me to make the move, I said, absolutely not. And I'm a people person. I need to be around people. And in the pandemic, we were in a work from home environment. The world was on fire in this country. I remember laying on my couch and a voice popped up in my head and said, you can do this. So I called my friend and I said, was the vice chair of the board. I said, I'm in. He said, what? I said, I'm in. He said, are you serious? I said, yes. And then we went through the process, and that's how it happened. But
did he cover up the phone and he go, he's in? Why is Matt doing this?
And I had everything to lose in that moment, but I knew that I could do it, and I knew that this organization was important enough, and I was committed to re-earning the trust from the community that we could get our voice back and be that conduit, be that vehicle to give our community what it needs in this moment, and create this organization to be something that can be around for another 91 years. And we've done a great job of getting our voice back, having real impact, and I think we're truly onto something special.
There's an old saying in news reporting: sex, religion, and politics. You want to have an argument? There you go. Mm-hmm. Just any of those three at any time. But so how do you do this so that people are not getting hysterical at each other? How do you separate them from whatever the stuff is going on there? Just sit down over here. We're going to have a real conversation. Nobody gets stupid, and to open it up. Because so we know when people get open and vulnerable that it sort of calms stuff down. Mm-hmm. But how do you do that? How did you have the confidence to do that?
So I come from the world of finance and commercial real estate. I dealt with a lot of tough people, and I had a lot of tough conversations. And oftentimes I was the middleman or the broker. And you have to be a good broker that has people's trust. And it goes back to when I was in second grade and first grade in school, when we had the school plays. I never wanted to be a character in the play. I wanted to be the narrator. I was always the storyteller, and that's carried on into my adult world. And as it relates to Mosaic Miami, I had a certain amount of trust that I brought to the table. We recruited some amazing new board members like Yils Belibara, the co-managing shareholder of Greenberg Charg, George Hodge, who's had an incredible journalistic career, now is in the communications business. And we've also brought on 3 new amazing young new board members that are bringing a whole new set of eyes to the work that we're doing. And then also tapping on the emerging leaders in this community, giving them a seat at the table. I think that's what makes this work.
Did you write a book yet?
Not yet. I think I have a long way to go.
Well, maybe keeping notes along the way will make it easier, chapter at a time.
100%.
So I think we have 7 minutes left. So I know you've had some help along your way. Mm-hmm. This might be a good time to thank them.
Yes.
By name would be good. If they passed, you can mention by name or not, and you can look right into that camera right over there.
Wow. So I think I will start with Bill Allen. Bill Allen was an incredible banker in Miami. We would get together at the beginning and the end of each year, and I'd give him the update of where I was in life. He'd help me connect dots. He'd always give me a book to read. And in the beginning of my career, he gave me the confidence that I could do it. Another person that was big in my life was Arthur Hertz, the former owner of the Miami Aquarium, head of Wometco. And me and Mr. Hertz would get together also twice a year. And I loved going to his office, and he had a wall of all the famous people that he interacted with. And he was the most humble man, but the world's greatest. Saw him as an advisor and as a mentor. And as a young kid coming up in the world, it was so cool to be able to spend that time with him. Of course, Dave Lawrence Jr. Dave, having the privilege of having the 1-800-DAVE hotline has been huge in my life, because I can talk to Dave about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there's so many of us in this community that feel that, we're the only ones that have that relationship with Dave, but he's spectacular. Another person is Jill Viner. Jill Viner is an unsung hero. Jill is the person that taught me how to fundraise. When I was very young, she gave me the opportunity to help start the Barton G. Kids Here Now Foundation alongside she and Barton G. Weiss. And it's a foundation for kids getting cochlear implants. And I would be the broker in bringing new donors to the table. And she would, at first would do the talking. And then one day she said, Matt, today you're going to make the ask. So I started making the ask, and that's how I learned how to fundraise, because she put me on the hot seat and helped me learn. And then Donna Abood was my first real boss, real career mentor. Donna was tough, but she was fair. She taught me corporate maturity. She taught me, being 25 years old and my desk was in her office, and having that type of access to seeing how she interacted, how she did deals, how she asked questions, that was one of the biggest, most impactful parts of my career that I'll never forget. And then, of course, my mom and dad. My mom and dad are my everything. They've given me everything and the tools to be successful, the maturity, the access, and because of my parents, I went into this world being able to take tremendous amounts of risk, and knowing that even though I was jumping off a building in terms of my risk of whatever endeavor I was taking, I knew that I wasn't jumping to the ground. I would hit a trapeze and be back up, and know that I would never miss a meal, knowing that they had their support if I did the right thing. So I hit the jackpot with my family and my brother. I have a brother. We're 11 months apart. Irish twins. It was almost like he sent me out into the world first. But, having a brother that's so close in age, I learned how to share and how to compromise. And as you said, it's not about me. That's what having a sibling like that close teaches you.
First of all, thanks for doing the work that you do, because it's so meaningful, and you look like you're fulfilled in what you're doing, and your passion is obvious, and you're caring. And I hope that you get some things done. And we're going to wrap up with two things. One, if you could have anybody in the world on your board, anybody alive or dead, who would it be?
Ooh. Do you have the Jeopardy song going on? I would say Alberto Ibargüen.
Mm-hmm.
I think Alberto's the smartest person I have ever met. And I was so lucky to have him as a mentor coming up, and being able to ask him questions and think things from his. He has the way to see things that a lot of people can't, and to be able to tap on Alberto for oftentimes prophetic advice, I think is amazing.
How did you know him?
I got to know Alberto because, to my father's chagrin, I cold called him when I was young.
Oh, no kidding!
And because he knew my parents very well, he took my meeting, and it was a natural, mentor-mentee relationship.
So he was former publisher of the Herald.
He was.
And I think he was working for the Knight Ridder Foundation, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And he said something prophetic about 15 years ago. He said, Michael, I think one day there'll be the $2.50 newspaper and then all the free stuff. He said that. I remember it. And, well, it's no longer $2.50, it's $5, all right? But when he said that, it was interesting that he could look out that far and say, there's going to be a change, all right? Mm-hmm. And those changes have been going on for a long time. So I hope that you and your team at Mosaic Miami continue to change and make the world a better place.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Matt, we're going to look right over to this camera right in the middle. And folks, first of all, thank you for joining us. Second, my brother Grant and I subscribe to the Disney rule, which is when you hug someone, don't stop until they do. Again, thanks for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you.